Welcome back, warriors, where war never ends, insanity never lasts. Don't forget to hit subscribe, turn on notifications, embrace yourselves, because from here on out there is only war. Let's go! Mankind's tech in 40k is a bit scuffed, wouldn't you say? Accidental rhyming aside, they used to have all sorts of cool things like weaponized teleportation, all-knowing AI, and other sci-fi gadgets. Now they have pretty much none of that. The only people that less likely still have that kind of stuff are the Custodes, who keep it locked away in the Emperor's basement for safety reasons, and the Adeptus Mechanicus, who have it in the same way I technically have a pancreas. It's there somewhere. Yeah, but I don't use it, and neither do they. The technology or my pancreas either. Neither works. The reasons for this are many. Some are self-inflicted, some are actually valid for the safety of mankind. Why don't we see why the card boys don't invent new stuff or entrust what they have to literally anyone? Let's go through the reasons that are the Mechanicus' own fault first. They're much less interesting to talk about since A, a lot of people already know them, and B, I addressed these points in my Mechanicus do or don't video, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. If I flubbed the releases of those videos and this comes out beforehand, then my apologies, but it'll make a bit more sense when that video comes out. You'll accuse me of running out of ideas either way, which is true, but shut up. Anyway, enough distractions. Let's talk about why Imperial tech is basically held together by duct tape and prayers. It's because the Mechanicus doesn't let anyone use it. One of the reasons for that is pretty self-explanatory if you think about it. If you have a super weapon capable of making a star system explode, and the other guy doesn't, you have a leg up on them. If you both have it, you're on equal footing. Therefore, the Mechanicus sometimes doesn't share purely to be selfish and lower power over others. It's 40k. If the idea of someone acting purely for their own gain in bad ways is new to you, then I don't know how you ended up being a fan of this setting. The other reason it's the Mechanicus' fault is that they ban innovation. Officially, anyway. Plenty of tech priests of all ranks to try to fly into the radar with that kind of stuff. Getting caught usually results in demotion to lobotomite or death, but that's just the price you pay. The reasoning essentially boils down to, ancient mankind already discovered all we needed to know. They just had the wrong ideas about stuff, like worshipping your light bulb. Therefore, there should be no need to invent new tech. Instead, you should always look for what's lost, because that's proven to be better than anything we have nowadays. If you don't do that and get the mad idea in your head that you know better than your predecessors, then, to put it politely, you can eat it and die while the Mechanicus doesn't come down at some primitive world, because some cavemen there invented fire. If you do some real future science though, you're in trouble. But in saying that, the last one was a self-imposed reason for bad technology. There's more to it than just that. That's certainly a big part of the reason, don't get me wrong. There are without a doubt cases where research that could save the Imperium is halted for no better reason than new stuff bad, old stuff good. But there's something very important to consider. Why does this reason exist? Why exactly does the Mechanicus hate when you develop something new instead of finding something old to replicate? It sure as hell isn't because the Mechanicus hates technology that's better than what they have. If that were the case, then the Mechanicus wouldn't be digging through every planet they can find, hoping to discover a USB stick that contains all the knowledge in the universe. No, the reason they hate people inventing new things, and indeed at least part of the reason they refuse to share so much of what they do have, is because of the fundamental way technology works in 40k. Have you ever had a flash of inspiration? Maybe you were working on a school essay and got stumped for a while. Then, all of a sudden, the perfect idea comes to you when you finish the paper in moments. Maybe you had a problem at work when all of a sudden, everything just lines up, and it's solved immediately. Or maybe you're the author of some absolutely horrendous smut like Squad Broken, and like divine providence striking you, you come up with the absolute best way of describing someone's balls. See, the thing about that in 40k is that sometimes those flashes of inspiration are actually divinely inspired. There actually is a deity plugging knowledge into your brain so you can put it into work in whatever way you need. The problem is that in this setting, the gods who usually do that are not the nicest folks around. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably what gave us Squad Broken in the first place. Let's run through a scenario. Your tech priest has just had a long day of work, despite the fact that you shouldn't be inventing new stuff. You feel like your research is on the cusp of success but can't quite figure out what's missing. Right now though, all you want to do is go back to your quarters and sleep. Or depending on how augmented you are, go into sleep mode. Upon waking or rebooting, you find that you awake with the perfect solution. It's almost as if something whispered it into the back of your mind while you rested. Furthermore, let's say your research involves making some kind of grenade, one that packs all the power of a Beyblade shell into a nice and portable container. That'll give the Tau some pause for thought when they see some random guardsman casually send a bunker straight to oblivion. You fervently go to work and finish your project. You go to test it in surprise. Upon pulling the pin, you've just created a portal to the warp, and demons eat you and everyone around you. Turns out a voice actually did whisper that knowledge into your brain, and that voice was Cinch, having a laugh. Part of what makes development so dangerous is that Mars and demons actively screw around with the mortal world. Whispering sweet nothings into some researcher's ear is a perfect way to get some low-effort, evil dickery done. Hell, you might do something like that by accident. And the Mechanicus doesn't want to risk accidental chaos corruption because someone decided to upgrade their Lehman Russ a bit. If nothing else, there's only so much that the Inquisition is willing to let them get away with. Of course, there are plenty of other reasons as well. Mankind has lost a great deal of its technology, to the point that even finding a perfectly functioning warship or something like that isn't the end of the challenge. Why? Because you probably have no idea how to actually use the thing. And even if you do know how to use it, you definitely don't know how it works. Let's go through another scenario. How I may or may not make up several of these as I go, because they're an easy way to demonstrate I almost know what I'm talking about. If the scenario sounds familiar to you, it's because I'm ripping it off of the 1d4chan page on the Mechanicus. So if you'd like to read instead of listen, go there. Let's say you work in a power plant that's largely run by AI. Simple, right? You probably don't know how it works, but you know enough to do your job. Then one day your superiors come to you and say, now build another one. How the hell are you going to do that? You don't know how to generate power or maintain the machines and the infrastructure. You don't have the team needed to do it. But let's say you do. Now you find a genie in the bottle. Instead of wishing for something cool like money, world peace, or a stand, you magically know everything about your power plant. You can build a new one now, right? No, you still can't, because building it requires all sorts of technological prowess and machines and whatnot that you don't have access to. That's another fundamental problem with the Mechanicus' use of technology. Even if they had all the knowledge of how X thing works, they still can't use it because it requires access to Y thing. Then knowledge of how to build Y thing is not only lost, but it also requires Z thing. So just start digging around, right? If you find a perfectly intact piece of machinery, just take it apart and rebuild it. Great idea, bozo. Why don't you take apart whatever you're watching this on and rebuild from scratch? You ripped it apart. Surely you know how to make a new one now, right? Maybe you're thinking, but I'm not trained in how to build phones or computers, dumbass. If I was a future scientist priest guy, I'd surely be able to. Fair enough. But the issue's still the same. The Mechanicus isn't trained in that kind of stew. Beth, because no one is anymore. Plus, if you only have one of that thing and break it, you now have zero of that thing. Your superiors are probably going to be angry with you, to say the least. Best to just leave it alone, and maybe use it if the situation desperately calls for it. Even if they can figure it out, let's go back to the power plant situation. You somehow managed to build this thing perfectly from scratch, and it works like a chime. Great, now upgrade it. If you built one, you can surely upgrade one, right? Or maybe, best case scenario, you double your power output. Worst case scenario, whatever city you've been powering goes up in smoke. What will probably end up happening is you just screw around with different things, and the end result is largely a waste of time. Like only slightly more or slightly less efficient than what you started with. With that in mind, why bother with it? The risk of breaking something or causing some absolutely catastrophic meltdown is too great. So even when they find something intact, it's usually best to learn only the bare minimum to keep it running. Just accept it. Unless you find another copy, this is all you have. Not to mention how dangerous it can be to mess around with this kind of thing. Even when it does work perfectly, the Men of Iron are the simplest example of what happens when the Mechanicus desires too much. If you make AI, they're going to rebel, eventually. You might say, just fix the problem for next time and you'll be good. Yeah man, just fix the problem. That's some real middle management brilliance right there. No one in the Mechanicus knows for certain. Why the Men of Iron rebelled, and while the Mechanicus might be able to fix the problem, a robot apocalypse isn't something you want to gamble on, even at a dice roll. Besides, humanity in 40K already went through one AI rebellion. No one wants a second one, and building more AI makes that a possibility. Even at lower levels of technology, there's still this danger. When I don't understand how a program on a computer works, I can click around and see what happens until I figure it out. If I'm a Mechanicus adept and try to do that with some long-forgotten superweapon I found in a trash can, I'm going to vaporize a forge world by mistake. That incidentally is also why the Mechanicus doesn't share nearly half of what they find and make. While selfishness and wanting more power are undoubtedly parts of it, another part is that if they can't figure out how something works, then some random space marine sure isn't going to be able to. They'll just end up causing more problems. And as much as hoarding things to keep them safe in case someone turns to chaos is a selfish reason, it's a reason that is justified often enough that no one calls them out on it. Even if you do figure out how to mass produce and recreate your planet-destroying laser to give it to everyone, it just takes one guard regiment to sighting quarters in fashion this season, and you just lost yourself a sector. Not to mention whether or not whatever you're building is worth building. Regardless of how great it is in theory, the Necrons have that funny button that can destroy any star in the galaxy. They understand how it works perfectly, except they never use it. Why? Because if they either use it on the wrong star or use it too often, it could cause a chain reaction of supernovas and wipe out the galaxy. If the Necrons say a piece of technology can go too far, maybe it's best to listen to them on this kind of thing. There's one final potential solution you might think would work, and that's to take a planet at a level of technology where the Mechanicus can safely say they know how everything on it works completely, isolated, and wait for whatever they develop to come out so they can reproduce it. Let's say it's at roughly our level of technology, because despite what you might think, the Mechanicus perfectly understands science as we know it today. You could even plaster the whole thing in holy words, so no demons can do just a smidgen of trolling and ruin the development. In theory, this would be the perfect way to get some technology back. The problem is time. For the sake of simplicity, humanity in 40K took about 20,000 years from modern times to the future to reach the peak of the dark age of technology. It might be a few thousand years more or less, but 20K is nice. Even so, let's go with that. That's a long time even by 40K standards, where a decade may as well be a day. The Imperium doesn't have 20,000 years to just wait and see what happens. The Mechanicus rapidly searches for lost pieces of technology because they can't afford to wait. They don't need a solution to their problems within the next 5 centuries. They need one in the next 5 minutes. Taking a break means devoting resources away from the orcs, chaos, and all sorts of other nasties. To keep itself from collapsing, the Imperium can afford to do so. Even in the perfect scenario where this thing is allowed to happen, once other factions like Chaos find out what the Imperium is doing, they're going to send all they can to stop it. There's a few other miscellaneous things I want to go over really quickly. 1. The leads of Othan. After all, they seem to be doing pretty well with themselves and they're almost archaeotech. Well, that's true, they have a whole history and culture entirely separate from the Imperium. Just copying and pasting what worked for them would cause a whole lot of upheaval, to say nothing of whether it would even work after 10k years of divergent development. And the leagues aren't exactly being open with their secrets. The leagues have also lost the ability to make some of the higher end stuff themselves. Like the photon they so desperately need to keep themselves afloat. So in many ways, they're not that different from the Imperium in the Mechanicus. They're really just at a different stage of technological regression. The same thing goes for trying to reverse engineer Necron tech, with the added bonus of them being even less likely to share with you than the squats. Because at least the squats are willing to do some ultra-capitalism. What the hell are you going to trade a Necron for? His stuff? Your skin that he planned on flaying from your body anyway? As for why they don't use STCs more often to boost themselves up, those being the stuff that led to the Imperium mass-producing ancient goodies, that's just an issue of time again. Parts may have been destroyed. Chaos might have tampered with it in the inner rim, so whatever you build just ends up with another demon grenade. If nothing else, it's been 10,000 years since the damn thing was seen, so it might have just degraded to the point of near uselessness. And even if it hasn't, everything else I've said still applies here. As for the Mechanicus being overly dogmatic and unreasonable about this stuff, they're really not. They're scientists. They're just fully aware of the batshit insane setting they live in, a galaxy where demons are very much real and are happy to meddle in whatever affairs they can. Nearly everything beyond a light switch they make has AI fragments, or actual spirits of machines inside them that need to be pleased. For every example of a technocrat needlessly holding the Imperium back, there's an example of a tech priest being torn apart by what he created because he didn't listen to his supervisors, telling him that caution is key. The Mechanicus worship a machine god. They're very much fans of rationalism and all that good stuff, but for lack of a better way to put it, they're very genre savvy about the setting they live in. 40k isn't miserable because everyone in it is an idiot. Everyone in it is an idiot because reason got shot when it tried to walk through the front door. And being a lunatic is all that's left. Jamming their souls into a ghost robot is the Eldar equivalent of the afterlife. Why would humanity have it any better? And even if you still think the Mechanicus is unreasonable after all this, there are 2 things I'd like to say to that. One is that 40k business is a report in the setting, and it's just kind of how it works. A bit weak of a reason, I know, but that's how it is. The galaxy wouldn't be nearly as fun if everyone in it wasn't an idiot. The other is that if you lived in this galaxy, wouldn't you be a bit unreasonable? Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the STC to my Mechanicus, giving me the ancient wisdom to keep me going another day. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching, and take care out there. And that's it. You've survived yet another video of mine. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment to let me know what you think, or just rant about some filthy Xenos. That works too. And of course the biggest. The reason they don't share their technology at all? One of them has by now surely found the STC for some fat anime-titted AI, and there's no way they're sharing that. I know I wouldn't.